Hi, I'm Jack Murray. In this episode, we're going to be taking a smoke detector and making a car alarm with it. My daughter has a 90s Honda Civic, and we got it from the insurance company because my stepdaughter had it and it had been stolen twice. So the insurance totaled it, and I got it from the insurance company. And I gave it to my daughter to drive, and she had it stolen again. Or actually, she didn't. They tried to steal it, but the battery was dead, so they couldn't steal it. But they did steal the stereo out of it. And so I needed to get an alarm system for her car as soon as possible. So I decided that what I really wanted was a smoke detector. And why did I want to use a smoke detector? Well, you know, you can find them pretty cheap these days. The old ones that take 9 volts are not even legal in California anymore. So anytime someone puts in new smoke detectors, they get rid of the old ones. So you can pretty much get these things for free. But the key about this smoke detector is that it makes a very high-pitched whine. And if you've heard regular car alarms, they typically have big loud horns, or they use the car horn. And that just wakes up the whole neighborhood and pisses everybody off. But a high-pitched sound that comes from a smoke detector is not really heard from a distance. It's really intense when you're close to it, but not from a distance. So it's perfect to not disturb all the neighbors, because they're not going to do anything about it anyway. But you do alert, you do shake up the potential car thief and let them know that they've been detected trying to steal the car. And this thing is very extremely loud when you're close to it, and it's really intolerable, frankly. So what I did is I took out the circuit board from it, which is right here, and I'm going to show you in detail how I did this. But I just wanted to go through maybe some of the ways to set up an alarm system in your car. You can buy fairly inexpensive ones, but I didn't have time to wait to order it and wait 2 or 3 days to get it. I needed to get this installed in my daughter's car as soon as possible before they tried to steal it again once the battery was charged. So I needed to try and put something together as fast as I could, and I already had a wireless system. So I used my wireless control system that I already had and the smoke alarm. So the way to do, you can try and thwart thieves very simply by putting in a toggle switch somewhere hidden that disables the ignition system, or in my case you can disable the fuel pump. There's a wire that goes to a fuel pump relay, and if you can put a switch in there to interrupt turning on the relay, then the car will turn over and try and start, but it won't start. It doesn't get any gas, and so I think that's better. One, you can hear someone trying to start it. If they can thwart the sound of the smoke detector, then it'll still make noise when they're trying to turn over the car. So, and then it won't start. And it's even if they knew that it would be the fuel pump, they're going to have to find this switch. But they can find it. If it's an inconvenient place to put the switch, then it's going to be inconvenient for the thief, but it's inconvenient for you if you have to reach under somewhere. So having an actual remote control is much more convenient. You can just hit a button, and that disables the alarm, and then hit a button to enable the alarm, and you don't need to deal with any kind of awkward switches. So that's the way I set up the alarm system. Is that basically I hooked up an interrupt to the fuel pump, and then I hooked up the smoke detector alarm to the door opening switch. So when you open the car door, at least in the Honda and most cars, you have a dome light that goes on, so it's really easy to access the switch for the dome light. And what I did is I installed the smoke detector board in the headliner. Well, I'll show you this close up, but so the actual speaker is sitting pretty much in the headliner right above your head if you're sitting in the driver's seat. So it's basically literally inches away from your ears. So if the alarm is enabled and you open the door, then it's going to set off the smoke detector. And then I also set up a blinking red light. And what I used is for that, you can just buy actual blinking LEDs that are designed to, you power them up and they blink. But I actually used this dummy security camera, and I took off the lens, which has a flashing red light. So just the lens part, and I put that in the car so it looks like it's facing the driver. And when the alarm is enabled, it turns on the flashing red light so that my daughter can easily see if the alarm is on or not, so she knows not to open the door. I would have liked to make it so when you when you enable the alarm, it locked the doors as well, but for maybe reasons I will explain, I couldn't get that to work with this simple wireless system. I had to punt on that one. So she has to manually open the door before she disables the alarm, then opens the door, and then she's going to have to lock the door, shut the door and lock it, and then enable the alarm. So I don't have the car here to show you it all set up in the car, but I do have essentially the same components, so I could show you that. All right, well, let me show you the details. All right, so first thing I want to show you, which is really the sort of most interesting thing, is using the smoke detector. And this is first alert. I don't know what the part number is in model SA300. And these smoke detectors are very inexpensive if you buy them brand new. I think you can buy them online still on Amazon for $7. Maybe I'll put a link to it. Or you can just Google it, go to Amazon. If you can't find one just sitting around, I mean, like I said, these old school 9-volt powered fire alarm smoke detectors are not legal in California anymore, so any kind of apartment complex, when the battery wears out, we're supposed to replace them with ones that don't use the 9-volt batteries anymore, but this one does. That's why it's so cheap. I believe they're still made. This one was kind of an old one. The 9-volt battery that came with it just didn't really work. But the circuit board comes right out of it. It just snaps in there, and you just take the top off. The top just snaps off too, and then the circuit board is just held in with these little clips, and use a screwdriver and it comes right out. And then I've already removed the actual smoke detector, which is this big belt black thing that has a couple pieces of metal, and it uses radiation. One of the pieces of metal is emitting radiation, and when the smoke comes in, it stops, it reduces the amount of electricity that can flow between two metal plates. So it's very cheap to make. It's called an ionization smoke detector because the ions are being transmitted from the radiation and they get interrupted. And so you can see I've already removed it. This is the first one I tested with. Before I had 2 of them, as the package showed. So the key is that this pin, this one chip, and these are still produced because I looked up the data. A lot of these cheap Chinese things, they cover up the actual chip numbers, but I think this is an American-made product, so they don't do that. And maybe for safety reasons, legal reasons, they have to tell you what it is. But I could look up this part number. It's a Motorola part. No, it's a microchip part number, and then I could find the specs on it, which is really, really helpful. But basically, this one pin on the chip is connected to these two plates, so you can just remove it. It's you're going to need a soldering iron to do this, pretty much, but it's there's really not much to it. You pretty much just have to remove the metal plate. One of the tabs is soldered in right here, and so the rest of it is not connected to anything except the other plate is connected to this pin on the chip, and it's got a big hole in there, and the metal comes through the board and then soldered onto the pin. But you don't even need that. This pin is not even needed. The key feature of this smoke detector is that it's got a remote firing mechanism. So when you can connect multiple smoke detectors together, and when one is set off, it causes the other ones to also go off. So that is done by this pin right here. It's the pin opposite the pin that's connected to the actual smoke detector. So if this thing runs on a 9-volt battery, but it will also run off at 12 volts. And it'll take a maximum of 15 volts, so it can run off the car's electrical system. So here are the connections for the power, which, if you see, it's got this 9-volt battery. These pins connect to these 9-volt battery connectors, but you can just remove all that, and then just use these pins. And if you connect the 12-volt input to this pin on the chip, it will immediately fire it off. And I'll show you that. You can hear it. So I have a 12-volt power supply. Do you see that? Yeah. So with some clips on it, and just the negative goes to this pin, and the positive goes to this pin. And there it goes. So as soon as you apply power to it, it sets it off. And you take power off, and it stops. So you don't even need any of the smoke. In fact, it's better to take it off, because one, it radiates radiation, which I'm sure it's not a lot, but if you install this right above your head, you don't want it radiating on your head. But one, it just takes up, it's a lot more space, so you don't just remove it. But you do need the chip to work, because the chip is the one that controls the speaker. It makes it beep, it does the right frequency. You can't well, you could, write your own software, which I do, but I am not prepared to do that right now, so I needed something that was sort of off the shelf. A soldering iron would do it. But that's the key. So this thing, if you run the 12 volts to this pin, which is on the opposite side of the smoke detector pin of the chip, and then it'll set it off. So that's all we need. Basically you take the battery power, and as soon as we power it, it'll set it off. All right, so this is the relay board, and it's got 4 buttons that control these 4 relays. And a relay works by having a small signal switch between 2 connections. So there's what's called the common connection, and then there's the normally open, or the NO connection, and then there's the normally closed connection, which is labeled NC. It's called NC. So a relay, the common is normally, when it's not activated, when it's not powered, it's going to connect to the normally closed terminal. So these two terminals are connected together. But when you energize it, then it opens up this connection and then it connects to the normally open. So these two then connect. So all the relays have 3 connections, and on the circuit board there are four sets of 3 connections, and then there's the 2 power connections. So that's how a relay works. And the circuit board here, the wireless control board, has 3 different ways of operating with the 4 buttons. There is toggle mode, where you hit one button and then you hit the A button, and then the A turns on and it stays on when you release the button, and then to turn it off, you hit the A again, and then the relay turns off. And now that allows you to have independent control over all 4 relays. So you can turn B on, and then you can turn A on, and then you can turn B off, and then you can turn C on. So they're all independently controlled. Okay. Then there's a toggle mode, which allows only one of them to be on at any given time. So when you hold the button down, it turns on that relay, and then when you release it, it turns it off. Now this is currently set in toggle mode, so not momentary mode. But you can change it by there's this jumper here on the circuit board, and you probably can't see that very well. But there's 2 pins that connect with this jumper, and it can be on. There's 2 different settings. Well, there's 3 different settings. One is the jumper's on one set of pins, pair of pins. It's on the other pair of pins, or it's not on either one of them. So those are the 3 different settings. So what we want to take this jumper off, and put it into interlock mode, which allows only one relay to be active at any time. So now when we press A turns on, and it'll stay on until if we press A again, it's still on. It just stays on. The way to turn A off is to turn one of the other ones on. So if we turn on C, now A turns off, and then we turn on A, C turns off. So it basically only one relay can be on at any given time. You press that button to turn it on, and then you press another button to turn that one off, and then turn the other button on. So that's what we want for our alarm system. We want the interlock mode, so this is how the relays work. So this is sort of the schematic. And then I apologize, this is about as good as I can do. So this is how we're setting this board up, this wireless board, relay board. So we have the relay board here, and we're just using two connections. We're using 2 buttons, 2 relays, the A and the C. So the A button is what we want to connect, when I press to get the car to run. And so what we have hooked up to the A relay is the wire that goes to the fuel pump relay. So here's the fuel pump relay, and it controls the fuel pump. It controls the power that goes to the fuel pump. So the computer in the car has 5 volts that it sends to this relay when the car is turned on, and that turns on the fuel pump. So we want to interrupt that wire, so we're basically cutting the wire that goes from the computer to the relay, and we're running it through our wireless control board on the A. So it's running on the A. So basically here's the wire. Can you see that? Yeah, it's in there. So here's the wire going to the fuel pump. We essentially cut it and then connect the 2 wires that were cut into the A relay. So we connect it to the normally open connection. We take one of them to the common, and then the second wire to the normally open. So without A being powered, there is no power going, there's no 5 volts going to the fuel pump to turn it on. So for the car to run, we have to hit the A button, and that will connect these two terminals and allow the engine to run. So the C button, we hit the C button, and that disables the A. It turns A off, so the computer won't be able to turn on the fuel pump, and then it also energizes the C, so the normally open C connection then closes. And the way we have that hooked up is we have the 12 volts coming, as I described, the dome light has 12 volts going to it all the time. So we take the 12 volts coming from the dome light and we power our circuit board with that, and then the ground, it just can go to any ground. It doesn't really matter for the power for this one. But then we take the 12 volts that are coming in and we put it into the common of the C. So when we hit the C button, the normally open connects, and then that 12 volts will now go to the smoke detector. And we also have it connected to the LED, the dummy camera, red LED. And because the LED runs off of 3 volts instead of 12 volts, so I have to put a big resistor in there if you want to run it off as 12 volts. I actually hooked up a 12 volt to 3 volt DC to DC converter, but if you don't have that, I have tons of those things, so I just did it. But you can just hook up a resistor, and I'd have to look up what the value of that resistor is. I don't know what it is. But you could do it differently, but that's the simplest way, is you just take this 12 volts that's coming out of the C relay and power this light. So we're providing 12 volts to the smoke detector. However, the smoke detector does not turn on because the ground connection is going through the dome light ground. And the dome light ground is only connected to ground when the door is open. So if you open the car door, it then connects the ground wire to ground, and it completes the circuit and turns on the smoke detector. And now the alarm will start sounding. So the way this is set up is when you turn the alarm on, so we hit the C button, we turn the alarm on. Now we've got power going to this thing, but it can't connect to the ground yet. So here's the ground wire coming. You see that? Yeah. So here's the ground wire coming from the smoke detector. It isn't connecting, but once someone opens up the door, boom, the alarm goes off. So they close the door, the alarm will turn off. And although the LED will keep flashing, because that's always getting the 12 volts, and the ground just connects to any ground. It doesn't go through the dome light. So if you notice, you could get into the car and then close the door, and then the alarm would go off. However, the car will still not start because the fuel pump relay is not turned on. It will only turn on if you hit the A button here. Now these two connections are connected together, and the fuel pump will work. So you hit C, you got the alarm set, our lights flashing. You open the door, you break into, presumably the door's locked, but if you break in, open the door, this connects in the, boy, that's loud. So this connects, fires up the signal, but if you hit, to turn it off, you hit A. Once you hit A, it disables the power going to it. The ground is connected, but now there's no more power going to it. And the LED turns off. And then these are connected, and now the car will start. So that's how I set up my daughter's car, and I don't mind telling everybody, because you're never going to find my daughter's car. So there you go. That's what I hope that helps somebody. I thought it was pretty clever to use a smoke detector, and given that they're pretty much free these days, these old ones, or even if you bought one, it would be $7, and you can get these wireless control setups for $10 on Amazon or eBay, And so for basically $10, you can get a pretty effective deterrent for someone to steal your car. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Check out my other ones. Take care.